Okay, perfect. Take care.
Thank you
Floor
so
is
much.
yours. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Welcome back, folks. It's good to see some familiar names. My request is going to be the same. I think Arun Ravi managed to preempt what my request would be is just to turn your cameras on so that I can see your face, you can see my pretty face, and then we can probably have a discussion and a conversation. So I had sent out we had sent out this feedback form, which I don't think many of you got a chance to look at and probably fill. And again, I just want to reiterate that the aim behind sending out these forms is get you to actually spend those 15 minutes thinking about like what you're learning and how you're going, how you're considering and taking stock of your own situation and putting it into perspective, given the kinds of things that we are conveying to you. So if you haven't had a chance at filling that form, you could fill that form, or you could just go to this menti.com code, which is being shared currently on the screen, and just fill in your thoughts over there. So that'll give us again like a very concrete sense of what you've. The questions are similar. Probably one or two questions have been dropped out, so we just want to come to the core of those questions and discuss it as well. So some of you who did fill the form had some interesting thoughts. It's definitely worth for the group as well to know and probably share how you all are thinking about these questions.
Just very quickly, Shashank, I think you'll have to advance the slide for them to be able to actually answer the questions. So,
Oh, really? Oh, that's how it works. Oh, okay. Sorry. My
yes,
bad.
it's going to be real time. So,
Got it. Got it.
right. So everyone, I think we have about a dozen of you who followed the instructions on the first slide while it was around. Please go to menti.com and enter this code. I'm going to paste the link in the chat as well, so that you can join directly from the chat. But this is the feedback that's coming in right now,
Got it.
Shashank.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Right. So people seem to kind of agree that they learned something new. It's also again kind of relevant to folks' current situation, which is in fact one of the questions, or probably the most important question that we had asked, or probably among the questions, the question on like what your current situation is, just assessing that, realizing what that is probably the most you can take out of this exercise. And rest of the things are pretty much for us to tweak content, make sure that the content lands right and so on. So yeah, we've got some 12 responses. I'll wait for probably like 30 seconds and then we can move to the next one, which is which is like a quick discussion on what you think is your current situation. Uh, all right, all right. So oh, there is a distribution over here. So let's see. So zero skips. A few of you thought it wasn't relevant to your current situation. That's interesting. Well, if anyone wants to actually speak up, I know this is anonymous, but if anyone wants to share what their situation is versus why they didn't find the content that was discussed yesterday, that would be useful. You learn something new. Yeah, some of you probably didn't pick up anything new over here. The session was thought-provoking. So I don't know how, I mean, the questions themselves seem a little correlated. So I don't know. Thought-provoking seems to be much more varied in response, but learn something new is not. So Okay,
Yeah,
that's
assuming some people may have found that the realizations were not new, but maybe
sure. It helped them
uh,
think through it. Yeah,
just a nudge to remind yourself to actually process these thoughts. So it's
fair,
not
fair,
necessarily new information. So,
fair.
yeah, I mean, it seems superficially contradictory to say that you didn't learn anything new, but you found it thought-provoking, but I think that's actually consistent.
Fair, fair. No, no, I agree.
Um,
Cool. All right. So we could probably head to the next question. This is very useful. So we'll come back to the folks who thought it wasn't relevant to their current situation because that information is actually going to be very relevant to how we lay out this course, how we design this course, even in the future iterations and so on. So would love to hear from folks over there. The next question is again briefly describe how you think you're realizing, how far you think you are in this journey. And I know some of you have responded on the Google form, but if you already have done, if you've already responded to it, don't worry because I have that form in front of me. I can read out those responses. But if you want to go ahead, if you haven't filled that form and you want to actually type it out, this is like a good way. So, and people will get to know about it. We can have a discussion. I think it's important to actually address this question. And it could be brief. You don't have to come up with like a whole long explanation, but even briefly, which conveys the idea is enough. And then, of course, we can talk about it in some more detail and like make sure that everyone gets a sense of like what the common kinds of milestones are. Because I do enjoy research. But, hmm. So we could probably start the conversation. Why? I mean, others could feel free to like use this time to actually type the response out. But given the responses that are already on the screen, would love to hear more. Unfortunately, this kind of becomes slightly non-anonymous in the sense that I want to really understand like what this means as to challenges make it difficult to follow through. Ooh, some more responses. But I'm scared of getting into a PhD. I'm having to quit. I've heard so many stories about people quitting after 5 years or so. I'm yet to realize whether research is for me, hopefully after all the modules, in a better manner and understand my motivation and capability very, very early. This is a path that I find emotionally stimulating. However, just figuring out whether I have what it takes. Fair, which is something that we'll also discuss today as part of our like core content itself. So this is also, I mean, while we are on this, this is like a theme that came up even in some of the responses on the Google form that I now think I now get a sense that this is going to be like a hard path or like it's not going to be easy. And there's like a long way to go. And I'm not really sure whether I have it in me or like whatever, which is what the goal is of this entire exercise is just to get like a very grounded self realization, appreciation for where your interests are. But it is also very easy to mistake lack of experience or like lack of just exposure to this game with like, oh, I'm not being good at it, so I should just like quit and do something else. Um, and that is like a hard problem to sort of address because when do you call it stops and like when do you pull the plug and then say, okay, no, this is actually not fun, not hard for me. Um, no good answers over there. There's usually like a sense of like uh, trying sincerely, and just the fact and the solace that you're trying and you still want to try itself is like a very strong, good enough proxy that you'll probably do all. just fine, just all right. So most people who find it extremely annoying, here's like an example or like an analogy usually that I like to give. So a sport is fun as long as you're playing it with your friends and like things are like fun. But as soon as you have to train for sport, like day in and day out, and it becomes like something professional, things can become wildly different. So a person who would have enjoyed like playing whatever sport just as a pastime with their friends may derive a very different joy from like playing it professionally, where it's a lot more serious work because there's like an end goal of like making it to some league or championship or something like that, and that can ruin the experience. Yeah. Once fun becomes work, it's no longer fun. But the interesting thing with research is not all of it needs to be sort of like work. It is, of course, you need to be disciplined. You need to get in like some amount of rigor in your schedule. But it can still remain stimulating and can still remain fun. So that's the balance that one needs to really look for. Saying while I'm like sweating it out and I'm like really pushing myself and it is feeling hard, am I really enjoying it? Would I rather do this than like something else given the time that I have on my hands? And if the answer to that is yes, then that's it. I mean that pretty much defines like you being a researcher, or that pretty much is the process of doing research. Okay, let's read these out, and then we could probably have like a quick discussion from folks who may want to chime in and break the anonymity sort of contract here. Just drawn to it, always wondered why that attraction. It's not money or social status. In fact, life and sports may have made me push every year, both financial and family duties. Fair. Pretty far along. Pretty far along. I think I'm sure I want to study more and not become a software dev. But that's what I know. Okay, okay. I'll definitely know something new, but not able to see what I will be after choosing research as a career. We That's one of the things that we definitely cover today. I'm yet to realize whether research is for me. Hopefully, after all the modules, I'll be able to assess for myself and understand my motivation and capability for research. Okay, now that's hopefully, I mean, that's the goal. And if we're managing to do that, then I think we'll call this course a success. There's a part that I find emotionally stimulating. However, just figuring out whether I have it, I have what it takes. So I'm currently in the process of figuring it out. Okay, I do enjoy research, but I'm scared of getting into PhD. Okay, fair enough. If someone wants to like talk more about I enjoy research, but the practical challenges make it difficult to follow through, I think I'd want to start from here and see what they had in mind when they were mentioning this. So if you feel like chipping in, I'd love to hear as to what you actually were thinking about. If not, it's just going to be harder, and I'll have to guess probably what you had in mind. Yeah, sorry, I see like
Shreya, this side.
hi
Uh,
Shreya.
yeah, so I put this across, and I'm not from a computer science background, but
Sure.
I am from a neuroscience background. I've switched
Yep.
from research, so I completed my master's
Hmm.
and switched into science communication, and now I'm going back or thinking about a PhD. So I really
Okay.
like the way your course was designed. That's why I'm here. And
Cool. Thanks.
when I'm talking about practical challenges, I'm talking about mostly, I don't think I have sufficient funding, or it'd be a very difficult task for me to go outside, which is
I
what
see.
most of the people are recommending here. But
Hmm.
when I'm talking about practical challenges, I mean, within India, do you have good institutes that are offering? Uh, I mean, I'm talking about PhD guides here. I'm talking about resources available to understand if you can commit 5 years in a particular institute. So sometimes it's just about giving exams and then just going into an institute without really realizing, without knowing properly what sort of process you need to follow to kind of understand what are the other aspects of PhD that you need to consider before just, considering your passion and going in. So that could be finding your guide, understanding if the institute is right for you, and understanding what sort of networking opportunities you have, and if that can give you a push forward into your next role.
Fair, fair. No, that's those are fair challenges to consider. And for the rest of the crowd, just to put this in context, which I also wanted to use the slides for, and I think I have this mentioned on the slides as well for today. Uh, let's take a step back and just like quickly assess how the course is structured and where we are along that journey of going through this course. So, if you recollect from the course webpage and what we discussed yesterday, so we started off with modules 1 and 2 or section 1, which just introduces research. So, even yesterday when someone asked me like, is math important for research? And like, no, not math important. Sorry, are grades important because let's say you do well in your initially you don't do well and then you pick it up. Is that good for applying or for this larger process of like being a part of this system where you apply to schools and get admitted, etc. I would say, and I'll tie this back to Shia's comment like in a bit, so bear with me. Uh, the first section that we're really focusing on is not really whether you're fit for grad school, what is the best sort of set of grad schools that you need to look for, etc. The way we have deliberately laid this course out is section 1 simply gets you to introspect and like consider whether research is a possibility, which for some of you may have already done that. So this is like a for all course, it's a 101 course. So if you've already done that stage and you moved along, great. But the first two modules, and I'm just emphasizing it for the benefit of everyone, is just detach this idea of research with applying to grad school and it being like synonymous, because that is generally our inclination. And unfortunately, that inclination is fine to have in when you've already done the homework and you know exactly some broad area that you're interested in and you worked on, etc. But many people, at least fresh out of like high school and in undergrad, when you're just listening to all these things from your peers, it's very deeply intertwined as to research with the idea of like applying to PhDs and like, getting into a PhD program. So my first job is to get you to unlearn that and like make that disassociation and then consider both these as separate. And then module 2 says, okay, now that we have some idea of where we want to be, having spent some time, of course, it's not going to happen in the span of like 2 lectures. You'll probably go back, think about it some more, do some legwork, and then figure out, yeah, probably enjoy this. And if you do that, then the question is like, how do you now formally get started with the research process? Like, how do you talk to like a person while in your undergrad? How do you talk to like a professor, probably who may have like a small project? Get started with that. What is the prerequisites needed before you even approach a professor and talk to them and like ask what they're working on and so on. So that's the second section where we are giving sort of information on the mechanics, which again nobody teaches, nobody formally conveys on like how to get started. And third is after having done some projects, after having realized that yes, you enjoy this process, you now want to figure out like, okay, what do I do next? So is it grad school? Is it like some research role? Is it like something else? And you have that discussion and like there is like a couple of things to consider in that phase of the journey. So just to put all of this in context, what Shreya's question hints at is probably in stage 3 in this. It best relates to section 3 where I'm assuming she has already, if I heard you right, you said you were a master student in like neuroscience or cognitive science or whichever, and she's done some work there. She's done some coursework. These are like graduate level courses, so it's a much more immersive sort of experience and an exposure to these subjects, and then taking some time off doing something else and then considering going back. So that's a along the trajectory. I'm hoping that she's already worked on like step zero, one, like do I enjoy this process, which most likely from this conversation seemed yes, yes, yes. And now I'm considering the actual practicalities of like where to apply, whom to work with, what is in store for me in the future, etc. So that's a much more nuanced conversation. I'm happy to have it, and we'll most likely hit that in like module 5 or 6, where the context then is that you've already gone through this work of like having realized that yeah, probably you've tried some things out, you've like worked with a few people, and then you want to consider like these realities of applying to different programs and seeing where you fit best. So for the benefit of everyone, that's the context. So enjoy research, but the practical challenges make it difficult. So these are the practical challenges that Shreya had in mind, which is uh, in the context of our course, we'll probably get to only in like module 5 or 6. So that's the last section of it. Cool. So yeah, I'm happy to chat more about it, but yeah, as I said, we'll get to it in probably sections 5 or 6. Any other like comments? I think generally, I think people are just like, yeah, scared. People are like considering, yeah, whether this is right for me or not, which is great. I mean, that's something that you should be doing. You unfortunately there is no test which you can take, and I can give you like an idea saying, oh, you know what, you score 80 out of 100, so you'll do well. There's that's what makes it very different from, let's say, like an undergrad course where you have like instant validation of whether you're doing well for whatever definition of well that assessment manages to assess you. So okay, fine. That's great. I'm also going to quickly read out some of the comments that I received on the Google form, which you're not able to see, but I have it on my screen. Is I'm confused about like the specific branch or the specific set of questions, I imagine is what they meant. But I do look forward to pursuing the PhD. So there too, it seems that yeah, PhD is like kind of stuck onto it. Yeah, the person is stuck to this idea of PhD, and but I'm confused about the stream. So yeah, it should the emphasis of this course is to turn it around on its head, saying yeah, I've tried these 10 things, I enjoyed, and I actually did well in these 1 or 2 things, and now I'm actually considering doing more, and a PhD is like a good vessel to sort of experience that journey. Rather than saying, oh, the destination is PhD, and then once I get there, I'll figure things out. I realized that I have some idealism towards research, questioning more on why and what. Okay, I think I have a long way to go before I can decide whether this path is for me. Great. Didn't get much of an idea the very first day. Maybe it would be clear in the upcoming sessions, hopefully. So in case it's not, please give us pointed feedback, and that'll help us improve if anything. Okay, let's move on with our slides. Did anyone else have anything else to chip in? And keeping in mind that this is section 1, where we are still talking about like what research is, getting started with research, etc. In that context, any other thoughts or comments which you'd like to share with the rest of the group? I know your journeys and where you are may all be staggered and slightly different, but yeah, if you think there was something that you would probably want to just get off your chest now, this is like a perfect time to just stop and chat, and then we can start over the slides. So let me fiddle with the slides, and until then, feel free to speak up. What's the best way to make F? Okay, okay, great. Okay, no one's spoken up, so let's move along, and let's see what's in store for today. So this is yeah, logistics feedback form that's already done. Yeah, the other thing I had a request with respect to the YouTube videos. So in case you or any of your friends end up watching these videos post it's been put out, please do consider spending like opening up a notepad and like just annotating the different sections, because if you give me these annotations, I will give it over to the team, and we'll try to make these annotations available on the YouTube video itself, so that someone probably like a year down the line, if they land on this video, they at least have some context as to what the different parts of the video talk about. Otherwise, it's a 2 hour long, one big stretch. And unless they go through all of it, yeah, someone needs to actually spend out two hours to figure that whole thing out. Just to help your own peers, if you're watching the video anyway, please do consider just writing out like short annotations like these. And if you could send them to me on like email, Discord, whatever, that'd be really, really helpful. So I'll also try to do this, but yeah, given that I'm already speaking, it's very unlikely I'll go back to the video and see myself speak again, unless it's some weird form of narcissism, which I do kind of possess, but yeah, we'll see. So that'll likely happen. But if you guys are looking at this video, please do spend some time annotating it. This is the roadmap that I was talking about. So at least the first day, the first 2 days, we'll just talk about why research, the introspection, whether you actually enjoy research, and find ways to actually get started. And this is like an important thing to consider as well, because just having someone tell you that, oh, you should introspect whether you enjoy research without telling you how you can actually concretely do it is a little bit of like a scam, I would say. So uh, there are some tried and tested ways. Again, it is for you to figure out more. If something else works for you, fantastic. But what we discussed yesterday was coursework is generally like a good way to start off like these little explorations. And labs especially are like a great way. Unfortunately, I think in our current system, labs are probably the least emphasized amongst like the between like let's say labs and like lecture courses. So labs are like the places where you actually get to like work and like actually try things out. So that's a great way to start your little explorations. Doing like being conscientious about your homeworks, your assignments. I think those are again like great ways to like make sure that you really enjoy this process. And it can be a tad too theoretical. So some of these courses typically in our engineering curricula, they're fairly on the theoretical side rather than actually getting stuff done. So it doesn't help if you, for instance, learn some machine learning algorithm and understand the math of it without you actually implementing it and trying out like a couple of things. So keep a very hands-on approach to learning things. Don't convince yourself that you've actually learned something if you haven't like implemented it, taught a class about it, like make a reading group, explain it to someone else. Just make sure that you are completely engrossed in it, engaged in it. And that kind of engagement is what slowly builds like an affinity towards these subjects. So which is again like a thing that I'll come to in probably the next module, which is like I know you guys are slammed with courses. I know all you folks have 5 or 6 courses to take in a semester, and your schedules are filled. But you also choose to prioritize like uh, other activities, and all these activities are good. They're good for your own growth. We're all, I mean, we need these other distractions to keep ourselves sane. And especially in like an undergraduate setting, it's good to explore, it's good to learn more things and be exposed to all these new things. But again, it'll come down to you actually making that choice. It'll come down to you putting your foot down and prioritizing these things. So that's something that you have to constantly like think about and like make sure that you're doing like a decent job, because all these take time. Unfortunately, I can't give you like a magic solution which uh, gets everything done in like time in like 24 hours with some few hours to spare. So that's why it is kind of like hard. That's why it's important to have at least like a very small community of like 1 or 2 more like-minded folks who are interested similarly. I know, and I've unfortunately seen these kinds of activities being so this notion of, oh, if I reveal my sort of trade secrets of how I perform, it's actually going to reduce my advantage in like applying to grad school or whatever. And unfortunately, yeah, that's not something that I would like advocate for at all, and it'll probably be detrimental to your own like progress. So having at least like 1 or 2, it's not going to be a large group because not everyone's going to be interested in this. But you would know probably 2 or 3 like-minded folks who are on the same sort of wavelength in terms of like general curiosity, creativity, want to try something out, even at the cost of like probably getting like a bad grade in one of your courses. All these are great. Just do what you think is right. Be sort of uninhibited in like exploring, and that these are the kinds of organic processes which really help you discover what your interests are. And we'll talk a little more about this in more detail as well. So that's where we are. And what we also again emphasized yesterday, which I also mentioned earlier today, is so the research simply does not pertain to just applying to grad schools. There's more to research than applying to grad schools. And yeah, well, hopefully I keep hammering this statement over and again, and you internalize this over the course of these 4 or 5 days. That first think about research from the perspective of, do I actually enjoy spending time on these topics? And then think about grad school and masters and like research and PhDs and advisors and whatnot. So all that will come, but all that is like immaterial if you haven't figured or like it's it's going to just make that journey much more harder and uh, less clearer, given that it is by its design, there is lack of clarity over there because everything is new. You're in a new space, trying to find a problem, trying to find your own voice. And over and above that, you're also trying to like establish whether this is something that you enjoy. Definitely avoidable. Uh, so modules 3 and 4, we went through this. This is these are some of the questions that we had about which we had yesterday. So again, I put these questions up, picked it up from the chat yesterday and put it up over here, just to again emphasize which modules these pertain to. So again, what's your opinion about PhD after BTech? Would someone actually want to answer this for me, given what we have learned so far, or like what we have like listened to so far? What's the best way to answer this question? Any suggestions? Any thoughts? You could just speak up. You don't have to like chat or anything. So if I were to ask you this question, what's your opinion about PhD, about doing a PhD right after BTech? What's your answer going to be? Any suggestions? No one? No one? Anyone? I mean, it doesn't have to be like super elaborate.
Uh, so like I have uh, I have like pros on both sides. So like first, why not right after BTech? So because in BTech we have, as you mentioned earlier, that a romantic notion of research, like research is some sort of magical thing, or where we will get to do cool things. But actually having an intermediate master's would kind of help us to get an idea about the research in depth. However, if someone is truly motivated and want to save some of the time, then they can skip all those job period and can directly go for research, because that will help them graduate early. Or these are the thoughts which I have.
Okay, so if you were to ask me this question, I would say this is the wrong question you're asking.
Okay.
That's what I really want to convey. This is not a at this in the context that of module 1 of where we are in like trying to establish uh, whether research is like a good fit. This question makes little sense because it doesn't matter whether you do a PhD after BTech, before BTech, 5 years after BTech, 3 years after BTech. If you haven't figured out like what it is you want to work on, which is what I want to convey over and again, and which is what I want to drill into all of you. So this question is void if at the end of BTech you still haven't figured out like what is it that bothers you and what is it that you want to work on. So having this entire analysis of like, oh, I'm going to save like 1 year if I do like a PhD right after BTech versus like me doing a master's, and that'll like help me like ground my expectations some more. It doesn't make a difference because you're either telling me that, okay, you're going to use your PhD as some place where you're going to discover your interests, which is not a good idea, is what I'm trying to convey. Don't use the PhD program as some place where you're going to discover something afresh. A PhD is a graduate level program where they expect you to come in with some maturity. And it is perfectly fine to work on something which you probably have never worked on when you get into your PhD. That all that is fine. But they expect you to have the maturity to have understood a topic in detail and actually have had a sense of what it means to do research. That really is the expectation. So an advisor or like a principal investigator or like a professor would love to work with someone where they're not really at a PhD level, where they're not really teaching them like really basic things about like how do you think about this problem, how do you think generally about this problem, how do you look up literature, etc. There are certain skills which they expect you to come in with. Of course, it doesn't mean that you have to be like this ideal perfect student before you go in, but it just helps. It helps you get to the problem that you want to solve, and it helps you focus on the right things rather than it's like saying, okay, I want like a high schooler to do like a calculus course. That doesn't make sense if they don't have the groundwork, right? If they don't appreciate algebra, if they don't appreciate like basic math, like high school math. Calculus will just seem daunting. It'll just turn them off. Likewise, that's think of the PhD requirement as similar, except that there's no coursework. You can't just do your undergrad coursework and say, oh, because I've done undergrad coursework, I'm going to be great at research. No, that's the myth that I'm here and that we're here trying to bust. So whenever someone says, oh, what is your opinion about like what are we doing a PhD after this or doing a master's, they're most likely asking the wrong question, because if they have done enough research and if they've been exposed enough to like a particular set of problems and they've got that experience, they will kind of know whether they're ready or not. I mean, after having worked on some problem for 1 year and after having known who the community is, what they're doing, you kind of have like a very concrete like information on like who's doing what, where, what is happening where, and likely you will find things to talk about with these people, very specific conversations, and that will automatically inform you whether you're ready for like a PhD or not. Rather than saying, oh, I've done my BTech, I have like a GPA of 9 or 10 or 8 or whatever, and then saying, okay, should I do a PhD now? Unlikely it's going to work. Unlikely. So that's what I'm trying to repeat over and again, and I hope this point comes across. Uh, and of course, there are lots of bells and whistles to this, which I'll come to in module like in section 2 or like section 3, module 5, where we are actually talking about like getting into grad school and so on. Because what if you tell me, oh, I didn't really have any good like courses or teachers or whatever in during my undergrad, and that's a fair reality for like most schools in India. So the answer there is, yeah, it's going to be like a much harder hustle for you to actually realize something, whether there are these topics that you're interested in, whether that involves you like taking courses on YouTube and trying to figure things out or like whatever. It's a different conversation, and I'll come to it in like module 5. But yeah, as for the current sort of module where we are, and as far as like the section that we're dealing with right now, where we're simply trying to understand whether research is even like something that we want to go ahead and explore, this question is not appropriate at all, in the sense of like it doesn't convey the right kind of like uh, uh, sort of maturity which we are trying to convey to you, saying, okay, first figure out what it is and then ask these questions. Right? Okay, so these were. So this is a question that had come up sometime on chat yesterday, which I seem to have missed. I didn't quite understand what participatory research is, but I'm guessing it just means like collaborative stuff. Yeah, sure. I mean, like collaborate, participate, do. Oh, by participate, it could also mean in like a cognitive science way of like you participating in as like a subject in a research. I don't think that's going to help. But in general, if there's like a collaborative is what you meant, if like just teaming up with like 1 or 2 people and actually having having a go at some problems, then yeah, sure, that's probably the right way to go about it. What qualifies as good research? We'll come to this question. This is like a valid question, and this is the kind of thing exactly that we also want to convey. So there is no good research. So that's the other thing which I'll keep driving over and again. And we'll probably hit this point either today or tomorrow, one of these. So it's coming up. But this is like an important, again, like an important template or like a preconceived notion, strong preconceived notion like most people have, saying if you don't publish in like this BIS conference, or if you don't do X, or if you don't do Y, then you're not a good researcher. And that's again something that we want to break so that you go in with the right set of principles, at least when you start this journey. All right, formally, module 2. This is again some things that I've already covered and which we covered a bit of like even yesterday. Start off with your courses. You don't have to do well in all your courses. You won't like all your courses. That's fine. That's the point of these courses. You shop around. You pick things that you think are interesting. But once you pick things that are interesting, don't give up. Be tenacious. Keep going. Keep digging a little bit here and there. See where your interests are. And that should be like a good first place to start things off. These are the more practical things that I was mentioning, saying what if you don't have access to good resources? How do you make sure you're doing well? One common symptom, very much so in the Indian context, even when I used to hire for my team, which we would see like repeatedly is people proudly putting up on their CV saying, "Oh, I've done like a course from Coursera or edX or like this and that. I've watched this YouTube video." None of that matters. I don't care. Nobody cares whether you've watched like 5 videos or like 100 lectures or 20,000 lectures. What matters is how you internalize that knowledge and apply it to something. Nobody cares if you've done one course or 50 courses. What really matters is like what information from that one course have you absorbed, internalized, and used to solve some problem, which you may have identified, which someone else may have identified. That is immaterial. But if you're not making use of the information that you've learned in like a way which can actually produce some output, and output could mean anything. I mean, you could like it could be like a small blog post or a theoretical result. It could be like a little system, a piece of code that you've written. It's all meaningless. And the sooner you realize this, the sooner you accept this reality, I think the more easier it is to just reconcile and like come up with like a plan to actually move forward. And this is the point that I'd like to like emphasize over and again. And there are multiple online resources. If you don't have access to like good classes and lectures in your own college, there are. I mean, there's no dearth of information out there, and that's a pro and a con because it's a con because there's just so much it can overwhelm you if you don't know what you're looking for. But if you're smart enough and like if you're like careful enough and you keep like get to understand like how to discard information, how to retain information, etc., you'll quickly find what are like the good set of resources available online. But that the game doesn't end there. In fact, it just begins there. Once you figure that out, once you watch these lectures, what are you doing with that information really is what matters. So I would rather hire someone in my team who has like, and I say hire in my team by putting on like this manager's hat, which I when I used to work in the industry. And this is how we would actually hire. So we would look for people not on the basis of like GPA, not on the basis of like which school they have college they are from or like whatever, but rather like the kinds of projects they have done, because that's the sure short like way to as a signal to convey to someone else what you know and what you've worked on. So if you have like a GitHub repository with like 20 projects, I would much rather work with you than someone who has like a 10.0 GPA who probably has no experience in like internalizing that knowledge and then applying it to something rather than just like doing well in some tests. And that is the reality for most PhD advisors. And this reality is not really conveyed in as many words. But if like a PhD or like whatever, like a research group is trying to hire you, be it corporate or like academia, these are the things that they're looking out for. Like how much can you like convey, like use a piece of information in your head that you already know, either from your high school, undergrad, college, grad courses, whatever, and translate that to the problem at hand. So focus on this. It's very easy for me to just say, oh, online resources, probably gate problems will help you sort of test whether you've internalized those problems, those concepts and on. And gate, for those of you who are not aware, um, it's this standardized exam which the Indian system has, where after your undergrad you can like give this exam, and this will be used as like a barrier to entry into like let's say like a master's or like a PhD program. I'm not sure PhD, but master's for sure at most of like let's say an IIT or an IIC or places like this. So those problems are slightly more challenging because they actually get you to apply these concepts, and that's a good way to like a low cost. And Google has like a bunch of these things. That's a good low cost way to test whether you're understanding something right. But again, that's not enough because after a point you can game that system and like just learn things right enough and solve things fast enough where you do well on the exam, but that still doesn't mean you actually know these concepts or can apply these concepts. So that should be something this hopefully is your guiding principle when you go through these courses and are trying to find something that you're interested and excited about. And as I mentioned, this process will likely be a lot of hard work. Hard work, again, I don't want to stigmatize hard work. I don't want to make it sound uncool and like laborious and painful and whatnot. I love it. I mean, I love going through all of this. Hopefully you will also enjoy it. But it's very easy to then take a peek out of your room and seeing everybody partying and like dancing and doing this and doing that and whatever. And it'll kind of tell you, "Arey, why am I like slogging myself off when like nobody in the world seems to care about it?" And that's a question that you need to answer for yourself. I mean, I'm not saying that you need to slog to do something interesting. You can party as much and like you can have like a well balanced life. But just the reality of this is it's going to take time. And for you to take like consume that time, I mean, for you to use that time and actually use your cognitive faculties and like learning something new is just hard. It's hard for everyone. It's hard for like the best in the field or whatever. So be prepared for that, and that's what you need to mentally sort of be aware of. And this is, I hope most of you have seen the course webpage, and I hope you go through the content along with this slides, along with this lecture and with these slides after the class or before the class or whenever. And it's very important. So I'm not the first person to be saying that, look, this is going to be hard. Many people have mentioned it in many different ways. I think one of the most aesthetically pleasing way that I find is this beautiful web comic which illustrates some popular radio hosts words on like what it means to do a creative art and research or like thinking, learning something new. They're all creative arts because it's using your brain to learn something new. And this is what he starts off with, and this is what he says in his. I think it was like a speech or something. I don't know, but this is the illustrated form of it, saying nobody tells beginners that it's going to be hard, that you're going to suck at it. It's you may have like an interest. We get into something because we have an interest. We appreciate something because we have good taste, but you are soon frustrated because that taste doesn't translate to outcomes. So think of it as like drawing or like juggling or skipping rope or whatever. It's looks so beautiful to you. When someone does it, when you see something, it just looks beautiful. And then when you try it, you look like a bumbling fool. And sure, I mean that is the reality of it. That's true for research. That's true for math. That's true for like all sort of skills. It's kind of hard, but if you're like well placed to have like a mentor who could probably give you a sense of this beauty and help you see this aesthetic and this larger sort of um, way in which things fit, it makes it that much easier for you to drive yourself and actually go through that grind of like really trying and pushing yourself and improving slowly and slowly and slowly. So I would, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling low, if you're feeling of like giving up and saying, "Oh no, this is just way too hard for me. I can't do this," I would recommend like going back to this comic, like and really spending some time with it, thinking about it, and asking whether you're just giving up too soon. Is that too soon, or whether there is this killer instinct or taste that you have in your mind, which you're not able to translate into reality, which you would rather like go ahead and like spend more time on, like figure out how to do so. Cool. So I'll switch gears a little and also talk about it'll address some of the questions that came up over here and just sort of provide more information on like what a career in research will look like. And I know someone yesterday had also asked, are researchers underpaid and overvalued and things like these. We'll talk a little bit about that over here. But before that, are there any questions that people had based on the content that we have had so far? Any suggestions, thoughts, questions, experiences? Probably you may have already been through this phase and you may have some insights which you'd like to share, saying, oh, you know what, I tried this. I don't usually find this interesting, or like I can't find this sustainable of like this form of like an approach or an effort. But I find myself like thriving in some other kinds of situations. Any other, yeah, any of such thoughts? Okay, all right. This could either mean good news or bad news for me, but I'll be optimistic about it. Let's go. Sorry, someone had something to say?
Yes. Um,
Yeah, go for it.
I don't
Yeah.
know, not exactly related, but a question. Something that I noticed about myself, like up to grade 12, the academics
Mhm.
under studies, The conceptual understanding that you have is like near perfect. It is rather easy. And something that I've noticed as I'm doing an undergraduate program right now is that you no longer have the same degree of understanding. Like the topics are broad, and topics have a deep depth, and not really covered in that depth or with the rigor that it requires. And
Yeah.
undergrad is just the start. Like it is and whatever however much I've come across all of this, um, like I've seen this movie plenty. It is something that I should basically know at an undergrad level, and
Yeah.
that conceptual understanding. So, like, is it just me? Is it like, is it something about me, or is it just about the topic or the nature of the study itself that has changed?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I should probably address this as well formally in the course and slides, which will come up in some flavor later today. But what you're experiencing is pretty much what I mean, without exception, everyone experiences. And things are all beautiful and rosy until high school because you're being given a syllabus. The syllabus is like limited. You know exactly what you need to be learning. There are problems that are testing you to sort of gauge that like understanding, and everything is nice and insulated for you. And then it's like rearing a chicken in like a nice little pen, and then you open the gates one day and you're in a forest, and then you're like, how the hell do I make sense of all of this? And that's again like something that we should ideally be working on systemically. Something like a IT Gandhinagar should take in that responsibility, or like an institute. It's an institutional intervention that needs to happen, saying, yeah, what can we do to make sure that your expectations of what you will see in undergrad kind of match, or you're at least ramped up to those expectations before you come into like a program. But that said, if you think undergrad is abstract, research is like probably that abstractness on steroids, right? Research that, or like a PhD is that kind of abstractness on steroids, where everything will seem hazy. You're like, uh, I should pick the problem that I want to work on. I should go ahead and find a solution that I need to work on. I should know how to implement the solution. Everything is like on me, like what the hell is going on? Whereas in undergrad, you at least have some more structure to you. You're at least being told, okay, these are the textbooks, these are the courses, this is the curriculum, this is the syllabus, and this is the kind of things that these are the kinds of knowledge that you need to pick up. And I think I don't know anyone who has managed to like really grok and absorb undergrad material across all their courses and do a good job at it. And that's something infeasible. But in the hope of doing so, what I think, and this is me, my personal experience, what I at least got out of my undergrad was very realistic sense of these different fields and subjects, even though I may not have gone into like great depth in like all of them. And like listening to my own sort of voice on like what attracts me, like where my attractions are in terms of like whether I like subject A more than subject B, more than subject C, and so on. So I use my 3-4 years really in trying to gauge that. And you can gauge it in whatever shape or form. It could be through rigor by doing like something very rigorous in each of them and trying to get a sense of depth. And there is no way to plan this, unfortunately. So it makes it seem, my slides make it seem that, oh, sit through some courses and you'll kind of land on like one over the other more naturally, or there is some sort of inclination that will attract you more to one than the other. And it's completely random. It could be because of like a good instructor. It could be because of like a good, let's say, homework, like an assignment that you did. Wherever you get a gratification, wherever you get the sort of sense of achievement, and that could happen through multiple ways, will likely attract you to it. And then you will kind of just start developing an interest in that field. So don't be too particular about, oh, like go back to your room and like close your eyes and ask yourself, oh, am I interested in databases? Am I interested in operate? Oh, no, I don't see that interest coming up. That's not going to happen. It's all going to be random. It's all going to be messy. You'll enjoy doing some things. You'll enjoy doing something. And it's a function of time. If you end up spending time for like 1 year on like a project, you're very likely going to sort of get an appreciation because you'll now understand details about it. So yeah, that's the long answer to it's perfectly reasonable to feeling like lost and not have this sense of rigor and like thoroughness. But I think if you truly want to enjoy research as like an area, that is the path of discovery you need to lay for yourself, saying, what can I do? How can I make sense of my undergraduate sort of coursework and framework? And how do I now actively pick and select from this to help me realize where my interests are? So yeah, it's a hard task. It's a very abstract task. Unfortunately, again, nobody's telling us these things. Probably even as a first year course, saying, "Okay, you guys have done great in physics and math and stuff." But this is the reality. I mean, this is how you can actually make good use of your next 3 years in exploring what it is that you like in your undergrad. All right, let's move on. We're all at the 1 hour mark. So let me talk about like what research. Again, people have these different notions, and that's because of like a wide variety of popular media and whatnot. What a research career is not is what we want to like establish today. So career in research is not expensive in the sense that it's not going to cost you a lot of money in the same sense as like having to pay for like an undergraduate degree. So I don't know what the course fees now is like, but whatever that amount is, you, your parents, someone has to actually put that bill now for you to receive an education. But a career in research, either in academia or in the industry, will in turn pay you back. They are going to give you some modicum of like some money, which may not be a lot of money, but it's at least not going to be in the negative where you need to be paying up to be learning stuff. And that's again like an important distinction and a fact to appreciate that the question then to ask is like, why am I being paid? So if it is like similar to undergrad, if it's similar to this kind of like an experience where you're learning stuff, why am I being paid? And the very crisp, short answer to that is you're not being paid to learn stuff, you're being paid to produce stuff. You're being paid to produce knowledge and not just to learn knowledge. Learning knowledge is a byproduct where you will learn something, assimilate it in your head, and then use that to produce some stuff. And that's why you're actually being paid. So this could mean research career over here could mean like a PhD program itself, even like a PhD program in India for sure. I think all PhD programs are definitely fully paid, where you don't really have to pay, but in fact, they will waive your tuition fee off, and you're going to get like some amount of money as like a stipend or whatever. Whether is that stipend enough for me to sustain myself for the next 10 years, assuming 10 years is this long horizon where you try out like a bunch of things and you figure out like what works for you. For some it may, for some it may not. If it does work for you, then you already are in that privileged few in our country who can afford to spend that kind of time and like learn and produce this kind of stuff. So use it, use that privilege. And if it isn't, unfortunately, then yeah, you'll have to take a call. And probably this is not the wisest sort of life decision to be making, because what nobody tells us is that there's a lot of baggage to doing research, and by baggage I mean this baggage of privilege where you're financially kind of stable, secure. You're not under any other kind of constraints. So things are assumed. There is this tacit assumption that there is a fair degree of stability in your general social personal life, and you're making use of that to you're kind of riding on that, where it's okay if someone gets paid like let's say 20,000 a month uh, even after like 6 7 years of experience, because generally that's not the kind of salary that you're expecting after 6 7 years, and you may be okay with that simply because you know that sure it's these 20,000, whatever this money is, I'll just use for my personal self and probably for my partner, but not like it's not being used to actively run my family or like run a family. Yeah, sure, you had a question.
Yeah, so my question was revolving around this topic about PhD being expensive. And
Mhm.
I do know some colleagues of mine who are right now enrolled in a PhD program, and some of them have not cleared JRF
I see.
net, which means that they are not getting funding. So there are a lot of cases where people are either not able to clear net or are funding the PhD themselves, which again kind of becomes this privileged position. But also, though in CS, I feel that there is an opportunity to earn well in companies, but in a lot of other places where research is your only like next process or next course to go into academia, it kind of becomes this huge life decision where people take out loans to kind of do your PhD abroad or here. As in, I just thought that it not be, I mean, it is considerably cheaper than maybe probably masters and BTech courses, but there is a huge like monetary investment involved, especially like in my particular situation where I would like to go outside, but I do know that that is not always feasible because countries in the US countries probably do give they do give salaries, but there are UK institutions which do not give stipends or not well enough to cover your costs. And then there's
Mhm.
this international and the local fee that you have to match the difference. So it kind of onus comes down to the student, and then it's a difficult decision to make considering all these factors.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and what I think, yeah. So the PhD scene probably is slightly different given the company, given the country, and this is again specific to like the PhD, but uh, programs in the at least. Okay, so here's the thing. Let me tell you what I know about this, and we can cover this in modules like module 5 as well. So organizations like academic institutes in the US definitely do pay you for like a PhD, and that's why it is super selective. The fact that they're going to spend whatever like $300,000 $500,000 on like a student is why it makes more sense to actually know that okay, this is something that you'll enjoy and you want to go there and like you want to spend that time on. And even the advisor or the faculty who wants to hire you will look for similar kinds of signals because they're just betting 300,000 on you for like based on like they need to be betting. Hopefully they're not betting blind and they're betting based on some signals, right? And that's why all these signals matter as to like what is it that you've done, what is it that you worked on, can you have like a meaningful conversation about your work? Because think of it as saying, oh, you know what, Google is going to come to my campus, and I'm just using Google, but it could be any of these, and they're going to give me like whatever 50,000 US dollars like a year, which is a fair amount of money. But the way to evaluate and the criterion for like hiring is just by looking at my GPA or like how well I've done in my undergrad, or well, for whatever the definition of well is. And people will say, oh, I've got like a 3.95 for 10 GPA, whatever, and all that is useless. Google will say, okay, I don't care about all that. Take this test, write this programming test. If you do well, I'll ask you like 100 questions. And then if I think you actually know stuff, come on in. That's a similar mentality that the US system uses. So when they do get in grad students, they do ensure that, yeah, they are funded. I don't know much about the UK Europe scene, and especially, and this is the advice, this is like the honest advice that I give everyone whoever talks to me about like these PhDs and having to shell out money. That if you're having to shell out money, and if you're not dead sure, like this is the broad, at least broad problem space that you're working on or like want to work on, then as you're hinting at, it probably is a suboptimal decision in terms of like if you can shell out that money and you have like a bag of money that is lying around and which you're okay shelling out, sure, go ahead and try it out. But if like the rest of us, we are all like we have our own constraints and finance is not like free flowing and like we don't have full access to finance like that, then taking a loan to do a PhD is, I think, like a very suboptimal like life decision. I wouldn't recommend it personally from my end, and this is my view, not necessarily someone else's view. I don't know how people think about it, but I definitely wouldn't. So I wouldn't even come to like my current PhD program if they hadn't like funded me. That's for a fact. There's no way I would have paid to be here. I don't care what the name of the school is, who I'm working with. There's no way I'm paying that kind of money to like enjoy this kind of like flexibility. And the reason why I'm here is, yeah, it's a fully paid program. My tuition is waived off. I get like whatever $3,000 like a month, which is like enough to live in like the city where I am and whatever. So unless that kind of like a you have that kind of freedom, and I know for a fact that I don't have to send money back home, and there are all these nice things that are working in my favor. And unless you have that kind of luxury, uh, I would definitely think this is like a suboptimal choice. I should think hard and actually look back as to who I know in my circle who went through a PhD despite like serious like financial constraints, and probably get their thoughts and actually document those thoughts formally on the course webpage as well. But yeah, every the first thought that comes to mind, and everyone that I can think of, like when I think about it, then they're all like super privileged, and privileged in the sense of like top like 0.1 percentile of the country privilege kind of stuff, where even if they didn't do this, they would have survived fine. So yeah, I guess that is the unfortunate reality. I'm not sure about the Indian system either. So I know for a fact, I know a couple of cases where I know friends who have spoken to like an advisor. There's a work fit, general work fit, and then the advisor writes some grants, and they use those grants to fund their salary. In addition to this whole JRF, which is like an independent thing, irrespective of what you work on. I know those kinds of things exist, but yeah, if all that is the issue and you're actually considering taking loans for a PhD, then that's not something I would recommend. And yeah, probably not the best use of your time. And it's unfortunate. It's really sad that there is this kind of a premium that you need to pay to access this kind of like a luxury. But yeah, unfortunately, that is the reality of it. All right, so moving on. There's also this general myth that doing research will ensure that you get into a job which is like super high paying. There is a weak correlation probably at best, but again, if you're doing this for like explicitly for like a high paying job, saying, oh, currently I'm at like whatever, and I want to switch, and this is why I'll do a PhD, and after the PhD I'll get like a boatload of money. I'll be very wary of that kind of like a decision, because it will, that the journey itself will grind you down. You will likely not enjoy it, and yeah, getting to something this unrelated goal through to the entire journey itself, not something that I would recommend. But that said, given that we are talking about computer science, most computer science PhD jobs are like fairly niche, and they end up paying more in computer science. But this need not translate to, let's say, the biological sciences or whatever. It's just that there's more money in CS. Most of us use Facebook and Instagram and whatever, and that's why we're generating more such ads, and there's more money to play with. But that's the reality of it. So don't be under this assumption that yeah, you'll earn like 10x more or like whatever. It'll just still be kind of in the same ballpark, probably a little more. Makes you this invincible authority. Many have this. Oh, you should see the nasty ego booster that people usually get after doing a PhD, and it's kind of sickening. It's unfortunate, where they really it comes down to like an ego of like, oh, I am this authority. How could you tell me off? Or like, how can you say I'm right or wrong? Again, don't get into this. I'm not your mom. This is not like a value session that I want to spend time on, but this is something to be aware of. This is like a trap very a lot of us can easily fall into. So just keep an eye out. Don't be under this illusion that yeah, this is something that you are like this master in the subject for life. You will be humbled like very easily by like the most when you expect it the least. But that said, the shelf life, as I would like to think it, for any tangible skills that you pick from grad school, probably is at best like 5 6 years. So after you graduate. So unless you're in the process of constantly upskilling and constantly keeping in that loop and like learning more, um, it'll just become obsolete. So you may have done all these crazy things 20 years ago. Uh, all of that will soon become irrelevant. But that's the nature of technology. That's the nature of these kinds of skills. So it's something to sort of keep in mind. I know one of the questions asked yesterday on chat also was like, yeah, what is goal of research and is it just irrelevant to reality? I mean, you're just sitting in your high castle and like doing something and like how do you tie it back to like reality? And this is that's a great question. And it's an important point that I'll again keep driving over and again, even in the subsequent sort of module. It is irrelevant to reality if you so choose to be, if you choose it to be. So if you design your PhD problem or pick a PhD problem, and the buck stops at you. So if you end up working on something which is irrelevant to reality, it ends up being irrelevant to reality. It's as simple as that. And there's no value judgment that it should be relevant to reality or it should be relevant to reality. That's the beauty of research and academia, that you push these frontiers with like super long horizon sort of gains, which you don't even think of when working on these problems. If it so happens that it gets translated to something concrete, fantastic. You've kind of hit the jackpot. If it doesn't translate to something concrete, so be it. I mean, there still is value to that kind of work. But if that bothers you, and if that kind of says, oh, I'm not going to do research because it is irrelevant to reality, then that blame is totally on you. Then there's no one else to blame, really. Because what you get to work on is totally in your hands. Nobody's telling you to work on project X or project Y. They'll probably tell you the first, just to handhold you and get you started to begin with. But after that, you really need to find your own voice, which is like an important theme I'll come to later as well, which I'll keep driving over and again. Think of doing research as like being an entrepreneur. And now people these days at least have like a much stronger sense to what it is being an entrepreneur. And even that stronger sense is, again, it's not strong in the very concrete sense, but it's much more fashionable to talk about being an entrepreneur today as it was like probably 10, 15 years ago. And the reality of being a researcher is just being an entrepreneur. So you need to have that instinct to pick a problem, to identify a gap, and you need to have the chops to execute it and actually follow it through. And that's what I'll keep emphasizing through the next modules as to what skill set and what mindset to even have before you approach a professor saying, oh, you know what, I like subject X. I tried out some of these problems, I liked it, so I want to work more on this and like try out a research project. Before you do that, I want you to actually like gear up and have this, be ready with this mindset saying, when you go there and when you start your work, think about it, think about that entire process from this perspective of being an entrepreneur. That nobody's going to spoon feed you telling do X, do Y, do Z, but rather you are like taking that initiative and getting things done. Which was also the class reading, by the way, for this module. I wonder how many of you are going through the course notes. The course notes has on the landing page itself, there's like a schedule of like what each day offers. And alongside that, you have like a column which says the readings for that particular class. So the reading for this particular class, if you haven't seen it, you should, please do, is on initiative, on taking initiative, and that's what I'll come to soon. This is also a myth. So if you want to thrive in research, want to do like a researchy job, you need a PhD or similar, like very advanced degrees. That's not true. Uh, Unfortunately, okay, that's not true is again like a blanket statement. The way the labor market works, and this again doesn't make sense to me, but unfortunately that is the reality. Some kinds of jobs are written off as saying, oh, you have to have a PhD. So if for you to become like, let's say, the president of like a research firm, you need to have a PhD, unfortunately. Despite you being like a in the weeds person who has actually done very cool research projects, for you to manage that group and like be the CEO of that group or whatever, unfortunately, the signaling that is required these days is you need to have. But if you're not thinking about, wait, what happened? Did the video just go off for a bit? Okay, I'm back now, hopefully. Yeah. So, but if you really want to just experience research, that's most likely not going to be required. You can join as like a research software engineer. You can join as like a software engineer in a firm which kind of is close to doing bleeding edge innovative stuff, and that will give you like a very concrete sense for research. So I was lucky enough in my journey that I joined as a research engineer without having, I'd done probably one or two projects and I had picked up some interest during undergrad. But I was super lucky to land on this job. This was back in like again 2010, 11, when even like those kinds of jobs are slightly more present now, but not so much 10 years ago. Um, where I landed this job where I was like an undergrad, fresh out of undergrad, and I was like a research engineer. And I was doing exactly what a grad student does or would have done, in the sense that we were trying to pick a problem and like go at it and whatnot. So I got lucky, but there are other roles like that. So you should definitely consider these other kinds of jobs, which don't necessarily need a PhD, but you can actually get like a very good sense for what research really is. And there's this myth that it culminates in academia, that you need to be a professor, or that's the logical like end goal, end game. That if you're doing research, that means you pretty much want to be a prof. It couldn't be farther from the truth. You could do research because you enjoy doing research, and then just decide to do something else. That's fine. That's totally fine. There's a value judgment that people seem to throw at you. I think one of you had also mentioned that you're too scared. You're too scared to try this out with this fear of failure and fear of like backing out. And I can't emphasize enough to sort of not to listen to that kind of peer pressure or like whatever signaling that you're receiving. We have just one life. I mean, like if you have the privilege to do research and if you actually enjoy it, I would just do it. I mean, like why not, right? I find no other rationale to hold me back from doing something if it just makes so much sense. So if you're scared of dropping off, don't, I mean, like, yeah, talk to like a counselor, therapist, whatever, but get away from that fear because it is kind of irrational. Don't worry about, I mean, like, no matter who tells what, it doesn't matter. As long as you went through that journey, and it'll harden you, it'll sort of think of it as like a, what's the right process? Annealing? Was that what it is? Like you dip like iron into like cold water so that it becomes like hard. Annealing, I think so. High school science. I don't remember. But think of it as like this journey is just going to make you more self-aware. It's going to help you realize who you are. Uh, so I would strongly encourage you to try it out, but be prepared when you try it out. Like this. So now that you realize there are all these factors which could pull you down and which could make you want to sort of say, yeah, this is not something that I enjoy. Do your homework. Do the rational thing of like being as prepared for it, and then trying it out. And then yeah, if you don't enjoy it, you don't enjoy it. So be it. So that's some advice in terms of like, yeah, how do you navigate different career opportunities right after research. There was also this question on academia versus industry. The biggest difference that I can probably say, at least as of 2022, because work from home is normalized, flexible hours are normalized, all these are normalized, and usually it used to be these kinds of things which people would throw, saying, "Oh, in academia, your own boss, you can do whatever." I think most jobs are flexible these days. I could be wrong, but at least it's not unheard of. So lifestyle is definitely, I would say, is kind of similar, but academia definitely has more freedom, and it has more freedom simply because, again, it goes back, and I hope that I have. Oh, yeah. So this is like a mistake from me. I wanted to write because you're an entrepreneur or something. I wanted to fill this slide up, which I'll do after this session, is because it's more flexible, or there is perceived flexibility in academia simply because you have to go back and think about it as like being an entrepreneur. So nobody is going to ask an entrepreneur, did you work today from 9 to 5, 12 to 1, whatever. It's just immaterial. The entrepreneur, it's their company, it's their group that they're trying to like push and like push forward. So sometimes they'll be working like 90 hours weeks, and sometimes they'll be working like normal 30-hour weeks. So it doesn't matter. You're your own boss in the truest sense. And you should look at some of your own professors, at least at Gandhinagar, to get a sense for like how they're all driving their own agenda. So this course, for instance, is also like an example, right? So nobody told Neil to float this course. She's doing it because she thinks this is the right thing to be doing for all of your students and so on. So it's a call that she's taking simply because it's the right thing to do, and nobody just really is stopping prof from doing what they want. But of course, with great power comes great responsibility, as like the great comic book has told us. So yeah, you get a sense for like what your powers are and like how you can exercise it and keep at it is generally the perspective that academia holds. So yeah, that's the kind of difference. And someone also asked academia versus industrial research. So someone mentioned Amazon research and Google research and stuff like that. Now, whenever someone asks me this question, I'm usually very again because industrial research, it's only in computer science, and even in computer science, only like select labs I can probably name them, and there are like probably 4 or 5 of them where they attempt to do blue sky research, where they attempt to do research which is just like interesting for the heck of it. Think of like let's say Google Brain or something like that. The work that they're doing doesn't actually tie into any product, and that's typically not how research organizations work. So in the biological domain or in the let's say manufacturing industry, chemistry, chemical industry, even in computer science, most computer science, research is not just some blue sky research which you do, which you could have done in academia. It generally ties to some product which is probably 10 years down the line, which is what it is like gaining with that, and you're hedging on that. And your salary today is like pretty much like a bet of it paying off 10 years down the line. So that's how industry looks at research, and probably amongst these players, Amazon Research, all these guys are tightening up their screws because uh, the economy is not doing well, etc. So if there is the economy is booming, sure they'll throw money at research, and you have all these fluffy projects that come up. But if it's not, they'll narrow down and say, okay, let's work on problems which are actually relevant to our product. So that's the nature of academic research, but the style generally is the same. You kind of publish, most of them publish their work, and most of them are open, but a lot of them are not if there's like IP involved in it. So you keep it internal and use that to develop your own products and so on. All right, so I've done a bad job with the slides, I see. Okay, all right. So that's pretty much it from the first 2 modules. So like just generally conveying what this notion of research is. Most of you or some of you may have already been aware of it, but I hope this further reinforces some facts about research and like dispels some myths and like does away with some of the misinformation that may have crept in through whatever channels. So that's essentially what I want to convey in the first section, pretty much as to what research is, and now we'll start getting much more concrete on like. And the assumption over here is, yeah, just to take stock of our journey. We hope, I mean, this section 2 and module 3 and 4 will be relevant to someone who already appreciates this fact that, okay, the first 2 sections or first 2 modules in first section was just to see whether you understand what research is, what the general game is, finances are, etc. involved, and how you can start getting a sense for it, how you can concretely start making progress. And this is, I think I had a question for you all, but now that I've already revealed it, maybe I can do it with some of the drama. But yeah, I'll just pause here. I know we have 30 minutes left, so I don't want to go on for too long now. We may end early today, but yeah, we could just open it up to questions and discussions. If anyone had any thoughts or comments, whether something was clear, something's too slow, something is being too repetitive, whatever, I'm happy to hear any thoughts, or just or what you take away from this in general. That would be most interesting for me to hear. So yeah, thoughts, comments, feel free to share. Any questions, in fact, if you had any questions on the material so far, or the ground that we have covered so far. Is this relevant in the sense of Is this helping you learn things or like putting things into perspective, which you probably may not have earlier? I mean, that's I think the key. And if it is not, that we'd love to hear more as to why you think it's not, or like why this is like probably redundant or whatever. I mean, whatever your thoughts may be. So thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, anything. I'm happy to hear more.
Shashank, so there was like a comment earlier in the chat
Mhm.
that I thought I'll just mention it.
Yeah.
So I think this was sometime when you were talking about that you need to know why you're kind of getting into research and you should know what your PhD should be. So Sunny was asking, do you mean you need to know your research statement figure out before you plan a PhD?
Yeah, no, but where do you see that question? You said
In the
somebody was
chat.
asking.
In
Wait,
the
what?
chat.
Why am I? Oh, I see this like chat doesn't auto scroll. Brilliant. Wow. WebEx, my God, there's so much going on over here. What? What? Oh, wow. Sorry, folks. Quenching. Yeah, quenching. Thank you. All right. God, I mean, how hard is like UX to say, okay, if there are new chats coming in, you scroll down. Probably if you want to then read something, it gets annoying. So yeah, not the best. Yeah, it's a hard UX problem, I guess. All right, great. Thank you so much for like bringing that to my attention. There's a general mockery of researchers in the society. Oh my God. Isolation, for example. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Most of our paid PhDs, okay, someone's providing more information on that. Sorry, I'm just catching up with the chat, so I'll go ahead and answer that as well. Society, friend circle, yada yada. Link to the comic. Thank you. Great anecdote. Okay, there's some anecdote. Okay, cool. All right. So, yeah, that's a very important question. Whether you need to exactly know what you're working on, and the answer is no, definitely not. But what is preferable is you having actually worked on some related problem, and you have like a germ of an idea as to what it is that you want to see. So as long as you've identified like a broad domain, and you're capable of having like a very detailed conversation about something, saying, let's say in what I'm working on, I can give you an example best probably from my experience or like my expertise, but so I work at the intersection of like programming languages and cognitive science and machine learning and so on. So I'm trying to understand how our brain understands programs. When we read a piece of computer program, what goes on in our brain? Can we model that statistically and so on? So for me to be able to, if this is the idea, anyone can have this idea. Right? I mean, this is like an idea. When you're writing a program, you think, oh, what is going on in my head? Natural question to ask. But there's like a big gap, or like a long way to go from that initial idea, seed of an idea, I would say, to something much more comprehensive, saying, I actually did X, Y, Z. I've done this small project. I've done this little experiment. This is what I find. These are the two papers that I'm aware of which do these things. So this looks interesting, but none of these works answer X or some other question Y, which is what I'm like excited about, which is what I want to try out. So if you come in with that kind of like baggage, it's very likely, of course, you will follow through with it and like end up doing something related to that. But in the process of like digging around and digging around, you may find something else which may be related, may not be related, which equally catches your fancy, from which you can also transfer your existing skill set onto it and then continue with it. So me personally, I didn't have any background in neuroscience. I don't have any undergrad background in neuroscience. I have no background in neuroscience. And today I'm like a trained fMRI technician, in the sense that I can actually put people into like an MRI machine and get brain readings out and so on. The last thing I would have imagined myself doing. And that happened after coming here. But I had this latent interest in cog science, and that was an angle I wanted to like explore and investigate. And I never even wrote that as part of my statement. So when I did get in, I got in with a statement that I wrote, which I also have put up on the web page in the resources section, module 6. Is I was just talking about things like, these are the 10 things that I've done. And I think this is like an interesting problem. And yeah, just hire me, and this looks exciting. Uh, and I'll this is what I want to work on. But after coming in, of course, I had the time and like luxury to actually sit down and think through what it is that I want. Uh, Corp science seemed appealing. I took a course. I sat through it, figured out like a sub problem within it, reached out to folks, and there was a lot of initiative from my end in actually making that happen. So, would my advisor have thought I'd be working with like a neuroscience group this closely? Never. Does she enjoy it? Yeah, she's in it for the ride as well. So she thoroughly enjoys like this collaboration that I'm currently having and whatnot. So that's my. I mean that should just tell you that yeah, it's totally up to you as long as the person who's funding you is like broadly okay. I don't think the person like my advisor would be happy if knowing her, she might actually be, I don't know, would be okay saying, oh, you know what, I don't want to do computer science. I just want to do like, let's say something totally different, chemistry. And then she'll be like, okay, so why are you working with me again? Is the natural question that she would ask, which I would ask as well. So then it becomes a problem. So as long as the jumps aren't like that drastic, as long as it's broadly in the kinds of interest, the sphere of interest of your like mentor, your advisor, you should be all right. So again, this is again very specific to PhDs. The goal again, we need to remind ourselves that a PhD is too far away given this journey, and there's a lot more homework that needs to be done before you even like get in over there. And what I'm suggesting in all of this is you use your journey, your homework as a passport to getting into like a advanced degree program where you can explore more and where you already have the maturity to identify problems, to see what it is that you're interested in, what you want to work on. So that's I'll keep coming back to these sort of take home messages because it's very easy to get carried away with the whole PhD discussion saying, oh, PhD is this and master's is that, and this is what it does, and this is what it immaterial, immaterial. Unless you've not figured out like what it is that broadly worries you as a problem and which is something that you want to spend time on working, you're probably going too fast. Slow down because this reality check will happen sooner than later, and it's better it happens slightly before you get into a PhD than like after. Because most of these cases that you hear saying, "Oh, PhD students are so just like lonely and depressed and like they have no idea what they're doing," it's a consequence of like them really not having a voice of their own, of not knowing what to do. And rather, I want you to like appreciate that this PhD or like whatever this advanced degree or like a research kind of job is space for you to explore where someone is betting money on you, where you have like a germ of an idea and you want to actually go ahead and spend that time exploring. So for me, the last 5, 6 years have just been a free pass to do whatever it is that I thought I wanted to do. And someone's like gladly paying for it. There's not like a more utopian sort of like environment that I could have hoped for. So that's how I would like much rather that is the kind of message or like the takeaway idea that you take from this entire like conversation and discourse, right? And that I'll quickly yeah. Are there any other questions or comments? What is annealing though? I need to look it up sometime. More creative researchers justify. How do we justify to society and our friend circle if we need to choose spend times? Why do you need to justify? I mean, that's the thing, right? So one of the questions that's been asked is like, how do you justify our choices to like our society and our friend circle that we rather spend time studying, researching, working, whatever, right? And it's easy for me to say again, why do you need to justify? Because there's a lot of like unseen privilege that I'm riding on where I really don't have to worry about like what others think and what they don't think. I mean, it's been a battle just getting my own folks to like be okay with the kinds of things that I keep trying out. And they're like, oh no no no, what will someone say? And no, this is probably not the traditional part to be doing things. And for instance, I took a year off after my undergrad. I mean, sorry, after my job before getting into grad school, where I just took a year off and I roamed the country and I just wanted to learn more about the country. and I wasn't even sure that I want to do a grad I wanted to get into grad school. So that was like a very it was like a very deliberate decision, and it's a longer story, whatever. And that's not normal apparently, and it's frowned upon, and people will like throw up like a big fuss and say, "Oh no, 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 this is not the right thing to be doing. You're wasting your time," and yada yada yada. It's my life. I mean, sure, at the end of the day, it may be good or bad for someone else, but I know that if I die tomorrow, that even if I wanted to, I just die not like having explored this or not having figured this out. So that's usually my guiding star, but not everybody can unfortunately use that guiding star to drive themselves because of like a variety of constraints, and that's pretty much it. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments? If there are any other questions, I'll pause. So I'll probably spend the next 5 minutes, and we can stop early on just talking about like uh, some of the homework that you would probably, or like if we recommend that you pick up before you actually. So we are at a stage, just to recap, we are at a stage where we think we like research because we are generally found ourselves to be curious. We're asking these questions. We have the patience to go ahead and spend some more time with our courses, etc. And we found some of the coursework exciting. We are like getting a sense or like feel for what the different subjects, and some of them seem more attractive than the others, and so on. And now you're in your second or third year, and now probably it's like summertime, and there's a research opportunity, possible research opportunity with some professors, either in your own college or in some colleges outside, wherever, and they have some research projects. And now you want to go for it. You want to actually go ahead and validate that this liking that you've developed. And you go to walk up to a professor and say, "Hey, you know what? I took these courses. I found this interesting. Do you have some more interesting problems to solve? Let me get on board." And what I would say, what we would recommend over here is hold on, hold your horses, and consider a couple more things before you actually take this step. So you may have already taken this step, which is great, which actually puts all this advice or like all this information in much more grounded context. But if you haven't, this is what we would recommend. So there are like a couple of skills that we think are worth your time in like picking up and like appreciating skills, perspectives before you actually start off your first research project. And yeah, just having this sense of appreciation. Again, nobody talks about these things, unfortunately, and that's what this course is here for. So the most important, like, and this will keep coming up over and again, the most important thing, which I'll want to hear, it's good that we have 10-15 minutes, and I'll want to hear your thoughts as well, is taking initiative. So this may seem like a very fluffy concept, sabko leader banna hai, everyone should take initiative and this and that. But in the context of you being an undergrad and being like wanting to uh, pick up research, taking initiative probably translates into something very concrete, which we'll try to tease apart. So the perspective that you need to uh, appreciate is researchers generally are trained entrepreneurs. They're trained technical / academic entrepreneurs, where they have a mind and voice of their own. They have a sense for what is right, what is wrong in terms of like what problems to go after, and they're listening to that voice and they're going after it. And then they're getting a team together in terms of students, colleagues, project associates, or whatever, and achieving those objectives. That's the aim of a researcher, or like that's the sort of true skill set that the researcher is exercising. So if you are a researcher and you want to be someone in that capacity at some day, you need to train yourself consciously to get there by following these certain principles or following these kinds of this adopting this kind of attitude or like a perspective. So you're training yourself not to be spoon fed and said, oh, you know what, do X and then do Y and you connect about this and then come back and report. No. Sure, I mean, the first time you do it, you probably may not like be well equipped to like do something, take initiative on yourself. But this taking initiative can be done in very modest ways. It doesn't have to be something grand. It doesn't have to be something as like fantastic as like, oh, you come back and say, I solved whatever Raymond's hypothesis. That sure, I mean, if you can do that, that's nothing. There's nothing like it. I mean, that's the kind of taking initiative that the world can probably like prosper like 10x from. But when you're starting off, taking initiative starts in a very modest, small way. And I did allude to it in the course of this conversation today. But I definitely want to hear your thoughts on having now understood, okay, what taking initiative is, where you think you can exercise taking initiative, which will improve your understanding of a subject, which will improve your understanding of like the skills that may be needed for like whatever research project or research area that you want to get into. So what do you think? I just want to hear your thoughts on what these kinds of initiatives may look like in your head. So that's the important bridge that this course also kind of throws open, saying, think in this direction, but we may not give you all the answers. That's the creativity that you probably have to contextualize to your constraints and come up with. So I'm very curious to hear like how you perceive this taking initiative to translate into your own life and your own like agenda of like knowing more about whether you appreciate research or not. So open to thoughts, open to suggestions, crazy ideas, probably that can motivate a few others over here to try something out and like whatnot. So go for it if someone has any suggestions or ideas. And this time my eyes are on the chat window as well, but I would rather you speak up. Yeah. Initiatives. What does this initiative look like really? Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Yeah, you don't have to raise your hand. You could just speak up. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I do not feel good being the only one speaking. I would really encourage my classmates also to do the same.
Yeah, you're like the savior for every instructor saying, okay, there's one person who wants to interact, so that's great.
Right. So, one thing about taking initiative, I felt over the years is that planning is very crucial. Uh,
Planning. Mm.
yeah, like time management and planning, and there are a lot of things we want to do and we feel excited about, but realistically, they may not always work out. So,
Yeah,
something that's helped me and something that I've been telling some of my friends also who are pursuing PhD right now is that you plan your leisure into your timetable as well. So,
sure,
like,
sure.
plan in your lazy times as well. That is this much amount of time I'm being lazy, this much amount of time, like, I'm going out with friends, I'm doing movie time or whatever, as well as put in your plans that you want to do, take up whatever projects that you want to take up. So, for example, for me, it was taking this class, which is outside my work hours. So, I kind of had to skip sports in order to do so, but I made sure that I at least made that realistic thing rather than being like, I'm going to go for sports right after because that's in my schedule. So,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of lazy time, take in lazy time, in like account for your lazy time.
Very interesting. Yeah, yeah. No, this is signs of becoming like an old adult, I suppose. That really is. It comes down to these kinds of things where you have to like stop telling yourself that, oh, I can do all these million things, and realistically you can't. And then you're like, okay, fine, I'll compromise on X, and I need my like 7 hours of sleep and whatnot, and then come up with like a schedule which actually does justice to it. Fair enough. But what I took away from like what you mentioned from the initiative part, there are two ways to look at this initiative. One is taking this initiative to just realize that you need to block off time where you're like brain dead and doing nothing. So that itself is like one step of like an initiative where you actually you consciously make you move in that direction. The other initiative which I heard from what you said was you telling your friends deliberately about it, you making it a much more structured sort of agenda to say, okay, it's working for me, sure, but let me make sure that this piece is communicated to as many people as possible so that they can also try it out and give me feedback and see if it works or not for them. The third initiative that I picked up from what you mentioned was there was this other course that you felt would add to your portfolio of whatever, like knowledge, however it benefits you. And the realization that you need to take this course over not taking this course is again like a sense of initiative. So all these are great, concrete little examples of how initiative is can actually materialize. And these are perfect examples. These are beautiful examples of like initiative coming about. Oh, now I see some chat coming around. While taking some interesting course, picking up some interesting textbook problem and twisting and trying to solve it, and ask the prof what they think of the solution or the attempt. Perfect. Yeah, I mean these are all like concrete initiatives, right? I would go so far as to say that probably your prof may not be like well equipped to answer it themselves. In like many colleges, that seems to be unfortunately the case. And don't worry about it. Don't be disheartened by it. Don't like sit and rant and complain whatever, say that, oh, this is the end of life. The fact that you spend time solving it, this is where the power of the internet really comes in. You can always find a community online who are just as beginner as to a subject as you are, or like as advanced as you are, and they can actually help you be that validation cycle. So if you come up with, let's say, a solution to an interesting problem, or if even if you're stuck or whatever, but if you do the job of rigorously documenting it and writing it out somewhere so that you can show it to someone else saying these are the 10 problems that I tried, that itself is like a great initiative. I mean, then you can make a little group amongst yourself and like things like that. So all this is like mind-numbing work. I can't stress that enough. I mean, from the outside, it looked so boring that on a Sunday morning, you're getting up and telling yourself, you know what, perfect, my breakfast is done. Now I'm going to go and like type out like a problem that I solved 2 days ago. Why would I mean, the barrier to engage in like such an activity is so high. Is like you would say, ki, chal chodo yaar. I mean, like my friends are like chatting, so let me just go and like full khali Sunday ko, and then like I'm like resting and like I'm done. So it's a lot of effort in the sense of like pushing yourself to like be this person who has taken this initiative to communicate this piece of information to someone else and get their feedback. But if you believe that this is important to your own learning, if you believe that yeah, talking to your professor is not enough, probably they don't have the time or they don't have the resources, that you need to reach out somewhere so that this loop is closed, that the effort that you're putting in gets validated whether it's right or wrong. That's why you find all these people on Stack Overflow, like students also, grad students more so. That there's a different problem over there where they're probably using Stack Overflow as a distraction rather than focusing on their own work. But all these people spending time as a community because they have like a set of skills which they want to share, and this forms like an instant like validation loop. I see like a bunch of like more things coming in, so let me just spend like a minute just reading them. Okay, someone's asking more about industrial research. Yeah, sure. We'll come to that in like module 5 when you're kind of ready and take up the next steps. Engage with academic research group, talk to research students, what they're working on. Yeah, now, so this is also, again, engaging with academic research group can be misleading in the sense that everyone's got an agenda. No one's free and no one has like villa time on their hands. So it doesn't make sense for you to just go and say, oh, you know what, tell me about your work. They'll tell you, why don't you go read my webpage and just read about my work? I mean, what is there for me to tell you about it? So do your homework in the sense that if you've already read someone's work or like you have like a sense or you have a doubt, and it's a genuine doubt, don't like go and try to speak to someone just for the heck of it, saying, oh, you know what, let me just spend time with you. But even that, I'm like looking down upon it. But starting there is also like a great first step. Start. I mean, as any entrepreneur would tell you, don't worry, don't think too much about like if your problem is like well enough and you've ideated enough and you have done some basic sanity checks, take the plunge, go for it. There's never a right time to do anything, start something, whatever. And it just takes like a long time to get stuff done. So I see like a common theme that seems to have come up in all of this is explaining things, being a communicator, putting stuff up on like YouTube, blogs, LinkedIn. The theme over there seems to be like communicate your work, which is very, very important, and I'll come to it as well. This is like a key part of this module. Is it's not enough if you internalize these things and work on these little projects and work on these little excursions. Let people know. Let people know. So, in fact, and I regret this because I wasn't like nobody had told me, and I wasn't like thoughtful enough to think like to actually do this. And it occurred to me in my fourth year of undergrad, where if I just kept a log of all the problems that I'd solved across all the subjects, like I had like whatever 5 courses a semester, 6 courses a semester, and we had like assignments, some of which like nobody would do, and labs and stuff like that. If I'd rigorously documented all of them and put it out today, there was GitHub was just getting popular then, so it wasn't even like a big deal then. But if I just put it up on some public web page, that itself so it's a testimony, it's a proof to that I took things seriously. I care about these details. I've thought about this. I've like worked on it. I've actually deliberated over it, etc. It's a great signaling proxy, right? Of course, you're doing it not just to serve as a signal, but because you think there is value to it as well. But it just becomes so much more easier for someone else to evaluate you, both from the perspective of hiring in like a grad school context or general hiring you to be a part of some team. Because like these kinds of actions speak infinitely more than like just words saying, oh, I've done this course, I've read this course, and I've engaged with this course. Useless. All that is useless. So there's one check for ongoing research or industry and look for departments that are undertaking. It is good to ask questions from such people. They'll clear up many things and keep you motivated. Maybe you can do some small research article, archive, preprint. Yeah. Okay, yeah, which we'll come to in some more detail. Yeah, that entire spiel we'll talk about in some more detail.
One way
Yeah.
that one way that I had to take initiative was, as I've said previously, I realized late that computer science is what I want to do sometime during second year of my undergrad. And initially, I actually tried to give the entrance again to switch my field, switch my major or my program. That juggling both college and that did not work out. I could not make the switch. So now, basically, I'm trying to uh, self-learn. There are some on GitHub. There's actually a good OSSU, Open Society University,
Mhm.
which basically uh, it's like to self-learn a CS program. So
Sure.
that is basically what I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
List of the courses from like a few top universities, and so mm, to gain the knowledge that I would have if I was in a CS program. So that is one way
Sure.
that I'm trying to do it. To
No, excellent. I mean, those are the kinds of steps that people need to pick up and take up to work towards like a goal that you have in mind. So it's great that you already have like a goal and you know how to get there and you're doing your like work in getting there. Perfect, perfect. Yep.
yeah,
There again, I mean,
I
like
actually,
the sorry, yeah, go for it. You wanted to add something more?
um, I even though I have not engaged in much research for computer science,
Mhm.
the research that I've had to do so far for my program chemical engineering, that is how I realized that I liked research, sifting through research papers and everything that I've had to do for projects. That is how I liked that. Uh, that is how I liked the notion of research and
Mhm.
the thought that I would like it and in a field that I also love. So that
Okay.
intersects.
Yeah, no, perfect, perfect. Yeah. More strength to you and like keep going, keep at it. Yeah, no. Again, like my only word of like thing that I'd want to add over there is like just make sure that you're also like using those skills or like making sure that you're like concretizing that knowledge that you're gaining from all these courses is being tested out in some concrete ways by doing projects, by implementing it, using it in some problem to solve some problem, etc. That's equally important. And closing that loop is much more critical than just like acquiring knowledge and just having like a sense for what topic A is about or topic B is about. So yeah, cool. No, it's a lot of work. I can imagine. I can only imagine like the kind of effort that you'll have to be putting into it. But yeah, all the best. Yeah. So we are already at time. So I think I'll pause over here. So I think that's like a good place to stop. I'll pick this up tomorrow and I'll keep again telling the same stuff in so that it becomes like very natural for you to consider that, yeah, being like a researcher is pretty much like being your own ship's captain, where you you pick a path and you pick a course, and yeah, you pretty much go after it. And that's very, very similar. I don't know why this analogy is not a lot more common, that like, yeah, academics or like anyone indulging in like research is essentially an entrepreneur in some sense. That they're not in some sense, in probably every sense, that they're pretty much setting an agenda and driving it, and that's what is critical, and that's what hopefully this course will, that perspective will help you sort of, picking up that perspective will help you sort of be get more out of this entire process. So I'm on time. Fantastic. So I'll stop here. Thank you. Sure. No, absolutely happy to. So people can probably, sorry.
No, thanks. Thanks a lot, Shashank. So I guess that's a wrap for today. I think everybody here is probably already on Discord, but if not, that's where we sort of keep the conversation going. So if you have any questions, comments, please do post them there. I'm just trying to get the invite link up in the chat. So yeah, so we continue this the same time tomorrow, in the same place, the same WebEx link. And we will circulate another feedback form with respect to today's session. Please see if you have some time to fill that out for us. It does help us sort of calibrate what we want to say next time. So, so all inputs are useful. Thanks so much for joining us and staying all the way. So, good night, and we'll catch up tomorrow.
See you. Good night. Good night.
So there's also a request to terminate the live stream on YouTube. This is for NPTEL. Right, Shashank, I think we can probably log off from here. I think it should
Great.
be good.
All right. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks
See you
so
tomorrow.
much.
Bye.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye.